Hello, I'm Dr. Scheidbach. I pastor Lighthouse Baptist Church in Santa Maria, California, and I'm your brain masseur. Get ready for your brain massage. The Bible says in Proverbs 28, verse 12, when righteous men do rejoice, there is great glory. But when the wicked rise, a man is hidden. Of course, righteousness and wickedness, within the context of the verse we just read, are understood in this way. Righteousness is that which God defines as right, good, righteous. And wickedness is what the Bible would define as evil, sinful, a trespass, transgressions, and so on. And so those, when the wicked rise up, when they are promoted in a culture, well, the Bible says the good man has to hide. And watch out. The wicked rising in this nation is always going to result in oppression laid upon the backs, really of everybody, but especially on the backs of those who otherwise are good people, salt of the earth people. All right, my friend, as you know, I'm responding to a speech a young lady gave at the CNN Rally versus Reality show, the CNN Town Hall turned anti-Trump rally that took place in the wake of the Valentine's Day massacre of 2018. When Nicholas Cruz went onto the campus of Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and slaughtered 17 of our young people and wounded another 15 or so. I forget the exact number now. But anyway, as I pointed out at the end of the last segment, her speech turned out to be nothing more really than an anti-Trump, or I hate President Trump speech. On the other hand, she did point out virtually every one of the arguments liberals use to advance the idea that gun control is the correct response to school shootings. Okay, so now as we proceed, let me begin here. Perhaps this young lady is not aware that taking up arms for self-defense is a religious practice issue. It's a First Amendment issue as well as a Second Amendment issue. Did you know that Jesus' answer to the reality that violence is in the world is to arm yourselves? Oh yeah. He instructed his disciples that while he was gone from the earth, they were going to have to take care of some things themselves that he would otherwise be taking care of for them. And included in that was the need for them to arm themselves. And the reason is obvious. Violence is a fact of life. It's in the world. And until he returns, it's going to prevail in our culture if we don't respond to it the way we were told to respond to it. And Jesus said we need to take arms for self-defense. Is it not interesting that the liberals' position is the exact opposite of what Jesus told us to do? Fascinating. This young lady went on to argue that Trump's reversal of the Obama gun control executive order requiring arbitrary and automatic denial of the right to bear arms to anyone that has ever been diagnosed by a mental health practitioner or who is deemed by the government to be mentally unstable as contributing to this situation. But actually, there is no rational person anywhere that would not agree that Nicholas should have been kept away from guns. Of course. And I'll go a step farther, and I'll agree that there ought to be a law allowing for obvious threats like Nicholas to be flagged. However, constitutionally, legislation is done in the Congress. It's not done in the Oval Office. Now, we recognize no king but God, no law but that which is in conformity with the Constitution, by the way. There must be due process. Anytime any American's rights are infringed or modified or curtailed in any way. But passing a law like this is not so easy as you might think. For example, recently on The View, a group of TV personalities declared virtually every Christian insane, mentally insane, who believes he or she communes with Christ, right? Or hears from God. Now, and I've addressed this in another video, but one problem with Obama's law was that it circumvented due process. No one should have their rights summarily dismissed by the government without due process. And even process can be abused and must be watched closely. And I hope President Trump thinks about this. What happened to him with the FISA court? That court was lately used by certain government personnel to suspend and then violate the Fourth Amendment rights of Americans in this country. And it was done under the color of law, which makes it especially egregious. So it's a tricky business to balance protection of our rights against the protection of our persons. But like our founders repeatedly said, those who give up their rights for security deserve neither. But it's like I said in an earlier segment, it's difficult to talk to teenagers about these sorts of things. And that is especially true when they are worked up and have been propagandized by the socialists operating much of our social media and in our public schools. Because, you see, if you say anything like, hey, let's be thoughtful about this, or let's be prayerful about this, thoughts and prayers. Boom, there goes the bomb of explosive, irrational hate speech declaring me insensitive and cruel and careless of the security of students. Or if I say, I'm concerned about my Second Amendment rights, well, you care more about your right to own a gun than you do about my right to live. Please. The opposite is true. Anyway, another typical liberal argument is that the number of guns in society is in some way directly connected to the amount of gun violence in society. And I want to begin by saying, you know what, there is a correlation. Yes, there is a connection between the number of guns in society and the number of violent acts committed with guns. Here are some facts. America stands at about 4th in homicides by gun. I mean, when compared to other nations. Something like that. And that's terrible, right? Would you agree? Yes. However, did you know that if you take out Chicago, New York, and all these other large metropolitan areas where gun laws are the most stringent and the most draconian and the most restrictive, you remove those from the equation, and guess what? America is 4th from the bottom of the rankings. In other words, in cities where they are implementing the policies that this young lady wants the entire country to implement, that's where most people are being killed by gun violence. Finally, this young lady comes to her speech climax and she goes into this BS thing, And we're grateful that she had the delicacy to say BS instead of, something like Barbara Streisand. Thank you, Rushbell. So this young lady, she declares one of the standard arguments that are used by us to speak against the idea that gun control is the answer. And then she refrains it with, we say BS. Or to that we say BS. You get the idea? Okay. So, to the argument that tougher gun laws do not stop gun violence, we say BS. And then to the argument that, in every shooting situation, it's a good guy with a gun that finally stops the bad guy with a gun. To that we say BS. And this one that I thought was particularly impactful. To the adults who say we kids don't know what we're talking about, we say BS. Okay. That pretty much wraps up her speech. It's typical for liberals to resort to cussing or summarily dismissing arguments with something like, in the example before us, rather than actually discuss these arguments. The young lady took the lazy way out and simply screams that it's only BS. So how do we respond to this? First of all, my friends, I would like to say that I really appreciate hearing from our young people. They're precious. They do have something to say, and we need to listen. It's always an opportunity to engage with them and really to learn and to teach. And if God will deign to say, come now let us reason together, saith the Lord, and then patiently work with us to help us understand, certainly we can do the same. In fact, God told us to give a reason for the hope, to give an answer for what we believe and so on. And so there are all kinds of levels of motivation on my part to be open to this kind of conversation and discussion with young people. I think it's a very, very good thing and a healthy thing, and I would encourage more of it. And we must take these opportunities when they're presented. Even though it can be exacerbating and it can be frustrating and so on, nevertheless, we need this conversation. Second, look, there are a great many young people out there who have a great deal of sense and understanding in these and other matters. Please don't make the mistake of allowing the left side of this debate convince you that that young lady represents all young people. She does not. It's a trick the left uses to their advantage a whole lot. We need to wise up to it. The liberal feminist woman doesn't speak for all women, and that young lady doesn't speak for all young people. And third, let's look at some reality here, shall we? It's the CNN rally versus reality show, after all, and time to look at some reality. The reality is that, as a matter of fact, as a society, we have always addressed evil of this kind with force, when we've addressed it at all, and certainly when we've addressed it effectively. The reality is that God has ordained government to execute wrath upon evildoers and to reward, not punish, those who are good. God ordained government to be not a terror to good works, but to the evil. When governments use the acts of evil men as an excuse to turn their powers against the innocent, they become a terror to good works. And in that environment, invariably, evil flourishes. Can anybody spell Venezuela? Actually, might be a challenge for you. Like Chicago. How about that one? You can spell that one, I think. You know, Proverbs 29 verse 2 says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. Let's extract a biblical principle from this precept, shall we? When the people are governed by laws of righteousness, as I mentioned earlier, as that is defined in the Bible, understood from God's revelation, the Word of God, the Bible says in that case the people rejoice, and I might add they prosper. However, when the people are governed by laws based on wicked lies, you know, like those of Karl Marx, like those of Lenin, Stalin, Pol Pot, Hitler, the people mourn under oppression and are impoverished both physically and spiritually. The fact is, evil is in the world, and God ordained an answer to it. He ordained government to execute wrath upon evildoers like Nicholas. Because we accept the fact that evil is a reality in the world, we arm police, don't we? And isn't it true that because we accept the fact, the reality, that evil is in the world, then we arm a police force and set them to patrol our neighborhoods specifically because there are evildoers in the world? We send people out with guns, with arms, to protect us from them. It might sound reasonable to say, no guns, no gun violence. You know, like no cars, no car accidents, right? We can't expect anybody would be willing to live in a cage like that. You know, where you have this over-concerned nanny state that's interfering with every single thing we do, controlling all of our actions, basically keeping us in a cage. No, we're not going to live like that. You know, afraid to go outside because something might happen. It's nonsense. Our answer is not to retreat from evil and hide. The Bible teaches that the answer is to step up to it and execute wrath upon it, upon the evildoer. As long as men know how to make guns, guns are going to be made. If you take them away from the good people, then only the bad people will have them. Besides, guns are a useful tool, and it's not BS, it's a fact. They are useful, and they're needful for our protection. And the best way to protect our kids from bad people with guns is to have someone standing between them and that bad person with a gun to stop them. And friend, that's a fact. And, you know, you expose your own lack of argument when you dismiss something so obviously true by saying, we say BS. You're going to have to do better than that. You can call the truth BS all you want, but you'll only make it clear that you've run out of an argument here. What happened at Parkland should never have happened. There was a fellow there who had a gun and could have intervened. Instead, he decided to keep himself safe while the shooter went about shooting these precious young people. Now, he claims he thought the shooter was outside. I'm not sure how that works. you run toward the shooting, and you can figure out pretty quickly whether the shooter's inside or outside, and so on. But anyway, he called it in. He used the phone he was provided, but he didn't use the gun that he was provided with. So what's he doing there if he's not going to put himself between the shooter and the students? Now, I learned recently that there were 4 other officers from Broward County, or 3 other officers from Broward County, who were on the scene and taking cover behind their patrol cars. And same thing. We were told the same thing, that they thought the shooter was outside and coming their way. They didn't go investigate? No, they hid behind their cars. It's unbelievable. Another school, actually many schools are doing this, but there's a school in Texas, a charter school, that is going to set up a police substation there on the campus. That's a great idea. Just let many of these police stations have a difficulty with space. There's a space problem there in a lot of cases. It'd be great if we could use some space at some of these schools to set up a kind of substation there that would establish a regular, ongoing, 5, 6, 7 days a week presence of the police on the campus. I think most taxpayers would consider that a legitimate use of their tax dollars. A whole lot better use of our tax dollars than some kind of a speed train boondoggle here in California. I like the idea of placing vets with guns on campus too. People trained to engage the enemy, to run toward the danger, not from it. In other words, it's time for a reality check here. Not a politicized liberal rally that has the political agenda of making Trump look bad, but some honest, conservative reality. All right? Let's get real here. The evil of violence is a reality, and God answered it by ordaining government to execute wrath upon the evildoer. And that's the answer. My friend, teaching our kids that the gun is evil is at first a lie. There's nothing evil about an inanimate object. They've been used to save lives. In fact, I read a study some time back that argued guns have, on the whole, saved more lives than they've taken. In any event, the inanimate object called a gun is neither the source of evil nor the cause of it. But they are used by evil people. And that is the reason good people need to have them, in order to protect themselves from evil people who have them. Teaching our kids that guns are evil is yet another lie fed to our children by the teachers we pay to subvert them to become puppets used by them to transform America into a socialist dictatorship. I really hope you're listening to that. You might think, oh, that sounds conspiratorial. I don't have time to go into all that's going on that points me in that direction toward that conclusion. Not right now. We'll do it later. But my friend, make no mistake about it. There's a circle down there at the bottom of all this, agitating a lot of this, that is their objective. They want to turn America into, a kind of monarchy, to bring it back under a kind of dictatorship. Reality. In America, we have a very long tradition of gun ownership. We are unlike any other country in the world today. There are 100 guns in public hands in America for every 100 people in this country. My friend, there are enough guns in the hands of private citizens in America to put a gun in the hand of every man, woman, and child in this country. Now, that's an amazing statistic, especially when you consider that if you take out of the equation those major cities in this country where the most stringent gun laws are in effect, America is fourth from the bottom of any ranking for gun deaths. Wow. But finally, as I conclude this segment and prepare for the final segment in this series, please understand that we must respond to these arguments no matter how ridiculous you might think that they are. And furthermore, we need to lead with love and compassion and patiently entreat those who, according to the Bible, actually oppose themselves. And it's true, this young lady, she doesn't realize it, but and the people who she represents, for whom she speaks, they are resisting and fighting against the very help they're crying for. It's just weird. They're being used to set this nation up for a bloodbath, the likes of which we've never seen in this country, not even in the Civil War. I mean, they're setting us up for the killing fields of Pol Pot, making America vulnerable to those who would bring America into the power of the likes of mass murdering governments like North Korea, Syria, Iran, or Russia in bygone days. Okay, I've lit the lamps in the Church Belfry Arch. Now you let me know you see they're on. Go to our website, brainmassage.net. That's brainmassage.net. God bless you. God bless America, and I'll see you in church.